Anticipation is building up ahead of US President Donald Trump's scheduled announcement on whether Washington will support the Iran nuclear deal any further. Media reports are claiming that President Trump has told President Emmanuel Macron of France that he plans to announce the withdrawal of the US from the Iran nuclear deal. The New York Times is quoting an unnamed person who was briefed on this conversation between the two presidents. But Reuters is saying that the French presidency has denied that any indication of the announcement has come or indication of a decision. The Iran agreement was signed in 2015 during President Obama's tenure. This was in 2015 when it was signed, and alongside Iran, the US, Britain, France, Russia, China and Germany, the EU in fact signing that agreement. The deal, a move to put tight restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. In exchange, Tehran was given some relief from the international sanctions that had been imposed on it. Since his campaign days, Donald Trump has opposed and attacked the Iran agreement. He argues that Tehran cannot be trusted and the deal is ineffective. He also says there are many other issues that should be dealt with, including the missile tests of the Iranians, as well as its involvement in Lebanon, Syria and Yemen.
Never, ever, ever in my life have I seen any transaction so incompetently negotiated as our deal with Iran. And I mean never.
But it was a terrible thing for the United States to enter that deal. And believe me, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, that I can say.
If that deal doesn't conform to what it's supposed to conform to, there's going to be big, big problems for them. That I can tell you. You're going to see that. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me.
President Trump virtually standing against the world in his opposition to the Iran nuclear deal. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the United Nations nuclear watchdog, continues to back Iran. The IAEA says Tehran is honoring the agreement. The West is also continuing to back Iran. In recent weeks, European leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel have made state trips to Washington to try and get the US to stay in the treaty. Well, let's go direct to Washington, D.C. to Kevin McAllis, who joins us from there. Thanks so much, Kevin. We're still waiting with the bated breath to see what exactly the contours of the president's announcement will be, though the New York Times is reporting that it will be a hard withdrawal.
Yes, that's right. We're just under 90 minutes away from this announcement by President Trump in what will be his biggest national security decision in his 15-month presidency. And according to this report recently released by the New York Times, he spoke to his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, and told him that he will be reinstating those sanctions that were lifted against Iran as part of the 2015 nuclear accord, and that additional penalties will also be imposed against Iran. The reporting goes on to say that this move was sort of inspired by Donald Trump's frustration over the limits within that 2015 deal, and in particular what happens after 2031. And that's when, in effect, according to the conditions of the agreement, Iran could begin restarting parts of its nuclear program. And it's that, along with other issues you mentioned in your introduction, Iran's malign activities across the Middle East, and its ballistic weapons ambitions, that Donald Trump has called this the worst deal in history, described it as insane and ridiculous. And importantly, of course, this is something he promised as a campaigner to get rid of, so it would be a campaign promise upheld. But his administration has pushed back twice successfully so far. But then you look at the men who are sitting either side of him now, his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his National Security Advisor John Bolton, well-established Iran hawks. Add into the mix the fact that this nuclear accord was an Obama-era deal, and Donald Trump has form on tearing these deals up. You just have to look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership and, of course, the Paris Climate Agreement for evidence of that.
Kevin, even if the president does announce he's ditching the deal, he's reinstating sanctions and he's imposing additional penalties, there is a 6-month window where, if all the parties agree to, there can be some kind of negotiation?
Yes, that's right. Things won't happen immediately. There is a process, and there will be a reconciliation process as well. That will last about a month, and then on top of that, it'll take some time for these sanctions to actually be reimposed on Tehran. And in that window, perhaps there's an opportunity for additional negotiations. Certainly, that would be the hope of Donald Trump's US allies, Germany, UK, France, all signed up to the JCPOA. They have tried in vain, it seems, to lobby Donald Trump over the last few weeks, flying out to DC to meet him face to face in an attempt to change his mind, to persuade him not to scuttle the US involvement in this deal, which they say is the best option at the moment. They acknowledge Donald Trump's concerns. They describe them as legitimate, that there are some shortfalls within the agreement, but that scuppering it is the wrong move. Donald Trump, it appears, certainly if you look at the reporting of the New York Times, in just under 90 minutes' time, we're going to hear Donald Trump's reasoning for getting the United States out of this deal. It'd be interesting to see if is the devil in the detail here. Exactly what is that withdrawal going to look like?
Kevin, just a brief comment on Iran as well, which has remained defiant in the run-up to this announcement, as you're pointing out, in just another 90 minutes or so, saying that if the Americans pull out, it will be a historical blunder, not the exact words, but something on those lines is what the top leaders have been quoted as saying.
Yes, no response from this administration to those words coming out of Tehran. But, one of the options perhaps would have been a renegotiation. If there's a hard exit, would Donald Trump want to go in for something tougher that addresses the problems that he sees, the shortcomings of the original 2015 deal? But what we're hearing from Iran is that we're not willing to negotiate. There is a deal in place. We have committed to the terms of that agreement. You just have to look at the UN Atomic Watchdog saying that there's no reports of any violations from their monitoring process, which was part of that deal, and therefore we aren't willing to sit down with the United States. But Donald Trump perhaps sees the opportunity for a harder negotiation for what he would hope would be a better and stronger deal. But it's one of those ones where time will tell, and I think this is going to be picked over certainly for the next few days and coming weeks as to exactly what the United States wants to achieve if and when it does withdraw from this deal.